Live in 15 seconds. Hello and welcome to Ethereum Classic Community Call number 31. Today is the 15th of November, 2022. We've been chatting in the green room for an hour before the call. If you'd like to join us, you can come to the Ethereum Classic Discord at ethereumclassic.org/discord. And we start every Tuesday at 1400 hours UTC, offline for an hour. And then we go live on YouTube at 1500 hours. This call is an open discussion, so please feel free to jump in at any time. So you can ask questions at any point in the call, but please make sure your notifications are off and keep it relatively family friendly. You can also post messages in Discord or on YouTube, and we'll try to get to them via the chats. You can find the agenda of this call in the description, which contains links to everything we talk about, and will be updated if there's any new topics that get added to the call. So yeah, we took the last two calls off. So it's been 2 weeks. The reason for the first call being delayed was that the time zones changed, and I think a few people were not aware of the UTC versus whatever the local time zone difference was. So we decided to delay that one. And last week I was off for scheduled real life stuff. So we are now back to the weekly calls. So see you this week and next week, and for the foreseeable every Tuesday going forward. And yeah, please check your local time zone to make sure that you're joining at the UTC 1500 hours. So given that we've had 2 weeks off, we have a fair amount to catch up on. There's a lot on the agenda this week, so we will jump right into it. After first of all saying thank you to Brother Lau and D_A for helping with the video and the graphics respectively. So first of all, some fairly big ecosystem updates. Full disclaimer, these applications have not been audited by me, and please do your own research as always when using any application on ETC. So first of all, we have from ETC Co-op the launch of Safe Multisig, which is a version of Gnosis multisig, which has been battle tested and used extensively in the Ethereum ecosystem, and is probably the most secure multisig available right now. And Donald was kind enough to post a new blog post on the Ethereum Classic website, which you can find at the top of the news page with a tutorial of how to use this multisig wallet and what a multisig is. So be sure to check that out if you need to secure any funds in a business setting or with multiple people, because this is probably what you should be using right now, given its battle-tested status. The Hebe team have also launched a new service called Etcetera Scan, which is heavily inspired, I believe, by Etherscan, the popular blockchain explorer on the Ethereum network. So be sure to check that out at etcerscan.com. That's etcerscan.com. And from last week, which we didn't get to mention, there's Hebe report, which you can check out on their Twitter, and the link is in the description. Classic DAO launches a website at classicdao.one. Swapline supports ETC, and a new ETC radio has been launched by a guy called Corey. So you can find him on Twitter Spaces, I believe. So if you want to chat more about ETC, then that's also a place to go. ETC hash rate is plodding along, pretty much the same as it was last week and the last 2 weeks, in the 150 range. So even despite the recent market downturn, the Ethereum Classic network is staying strong in terms of hash rate. There's been a bit of a drop in the total locked value on ETC, primarily due to the FTX incident, which we'll talk about later, I think. But basically, some of the liquidity has exited the swap services on Ethereum Classic. but it's still relatively unchanged. It's not a massive drop. And the headline of the week, which just landed before the call, is that the Ethereum Classic cooperative has a new communications team, which includes Donald McIntyre, Andrew, Angela, and Emma, who will be working together with the sole goal of promoting Ethereum Classic. So that's great news. And I think we talked about this on a previous call, so it's nice that Bob's promise has come through now. So it's awesome to have new people with communicative skills and to be able to talk about Ethereum Classic to the world. So looking forward to what they have to bring. And speaking of Donald, the main agenda item of the day is Bitgold, which Donald McIntyre has joined us to talk about. And why don't you take the floor, Donald?
Thank you, Stora. And thank you also for announcing that I wrote that article about Safe. I think it's an incredible product for teams to create multi-sig wallets. And it's a very good idea also for individuals. Currently, it's a security form that I didn't think about, which is that an individual could have, for example, a mobile wallet, a desktop wallet, and a hardware wallet, for example, and that person could create a multi-sig using the 3 wallets with 3 different addresses. And it's a way of increasing security of one's individual wallet, because if you lose one, if you lose your hardware wallet and it's compromised, it doesn't matter, because they would need the other 2 signatures as well, and the same with the other devices. Now, if you lose your desktop or you lose your phone or they're hacked, the intruder would have to get a hold of the 3 devices. So I think that was also very interesting.
Yeah, I think there's just to jump in there, another great use case for multi-sigs is social recovery. So if you as a means to pass on wealth, if a bus collided with you at any point in time, you could give 2 trusted next of kin the ability to sign a transaction using the multi-sig, and then they would be able to recover the funds eventually.
That's a very good idea, and also why not for inheritance planning as well? You can give, for example, your instructions to, no say, 3 loved ones and a lawyer and your accountant, and if they all get together and when you die, they pass everything to the next generation according to your will. That's a very good idea as well. And also thank you, Stora, for talking about the announcement by the ETC cooperative. I am extremely happy to be part of the ETC cooperative, so I can dedicate my time professionally to work for ETC. When I worked for ETC Dev in 2018, it was my dream job, because I could dedicate my time to Ethereum Classic, which is the earthly project of which I have the most passion for in my life. And when that was gone because of the information that we know, and now to work for the ETC cooperative and be able to be dedicated again to ETC professionally is again my dream job. So I'm very happy with that. And also the team, Andrew, Angela, and Donna, they're Emma, amazing. Emma's going to be working on events. Angela is a communications manager, so all the activity that you see on social media now, it's her. She's managing all the channels, and Andrew he manages the strategy, and he's the marketing manager. So soon we're going to have a full plan, and the ETC cooperative is going to be working actively and in a structured way to promote Ethereum Classic. Well, I want to talk now about Bitgold. And the idea of Bitgold is the original idea of Bitcoin. When you see the structure of Bitcoin, The original idea was the proof of work that was invented by Adam Back, was the monetary asset on the internet itself. In the real world, when you get a nugget of gold, it's proof that miners had to work a lot to take it out, and this is why it's scarce, and it's very costly because of its scarcity and the cost of extracting it from nature. And Nick Szabo had the idea in 1997, 1998, when he saw Adam Back's proof of work system, that the proofs of work, the hashes themselves, were digital gold. That's the digital gold. And then Wei Dai and Hal Finney, etc., had different ideas, and Satoshi Nakamoto eventually created Bitcoin. But Bitcoin is not really Bitgold. Bitcoin has Bitgold hidden in the blockchain, in the database. And instead of using the gold itself, the digital gold itself, which are the block hashes, we are basically using a fiat currency, a community fiat currency that was created just to pay miners each time they created a digital gold nugget, which is the block hash. So the block hashes basically are buried inside the blockchain, and that is the real gold, the digital gold. And what the network does is it issues an artificial community fiat token, which is Bitcoin, the currency, to pay miners for that effort. But the Bitgold itself is not being transferred and used as digital gold. Bitcoin is the asset that we are transferring, and it's divisible and has all fungibility and all those properties, very good properties of money. So I would say that Bitcoin is just a step before Bitgold. At the time, Bitgold was not possible to implement because the block hashes are not fungible. Each block hash is different than the other, especially as time passes by. The block hashes in 2009, 2010 were created with much less work and capital investment than today's hashes, for example. So that presented a problem, and there had to be a market where people could negotiate these non-fungible gold nuggets or digital gold nuggets to be able to find the value and then go to a process of issuing the currency backed by these Bitgold nuggets. So because these additional steps were not yet created, invented, or designed by computer scientists, Satoshi Nakamoto basically did a shortcut, which is basically, okay, you create the digital gold, you cannot sell it or do anything with it, but I'm going to give you an artificial currency that I'm going to make up, and I'm going to call it Bitcoin. And I'm sure that the name Bitcoin is on purpose because the real gold was Bitgold. So Satoshi said, I'm not going to call it Bitgold or something like that. I'm going to call it Bitcoin because I'm really making up a coin here in this new system. So that's very important to understand my idea of how to integrate Bitgold to ETC. Does anybody have a question about that? What is Bitgold and why Bitcoin and ETC are really made up currency?
So I'm guessing you could say in a way that Bitcoin is backed by Bitgold because the hashes are what secure Bitcoin. Is that correct?
That's a good question. It's really, I would say it's not backed, because backed means that you could say, okay, I have a Bitcoin, say I have 6.25 Bitcoins that were just issued to pay a miner for creating a block hash. So I could say it's backed by that block hash, but the reality is just not really backed. It was just issued against the creation of the block hash, and that's it. Fully backed would mean that I could redeem the coins and get the block hash itself as in exchange, no? if when there was gold convertibility or the gold standard with central banks, if you had say $100, you would go to the Federal Reserve and they would give you 3 ounces of physical gold. So that's really backed because you can actually change it for the gold. But currently, Bitcoin is issued only when the digital gold or the Bitgold is created. So in that sense, it's partially backed because it's not issued if the Bitgold is not created. But once issued, it's not backed any longer, because the ultimate asset that you have is Bitcoin, and you cannot convert it into real digital gold. So I wouldn't use the term backed. I would use maybe is digital gold issued or something like that, but it's not really backed.
Okay. Yeah, I thanks for clarifying that. Does that mean that Bitgold is non-transferable if it's just a hash?
Well, no, for now, because of the design of how Bitcoin is designed and Ethereum Classic is designed, they're not transferable. They're just buried in the block. You go to the database and you can see the hashes on a block by block basis, and that's it. But there's no token that is transferable that represents that Bitgold. So it's not because it's not possible. I'm going to tell you now why it's possible now, but it's because it was designed like that, because the Satoshi and the original designer, or Vitalik, when they created Ethereum and Bitcoin, they knew that the block hashes could not be used as digital gold at the time, and I guess they didn't foresee that maybe in the future they could be used. So both in Bitcoin and Ethereum Classic, there should be a change in the network protocol, I guess, to make the block hashes, to turn them into non-fungible tokens, and then for them to be transferable.
So you said, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
You said non-fungible. So would they be, in your vision, would they be swappable with a fungible token that's at that network level?
Exactly. Just like gold works, gold and digital gold are not exactly the same, because gold is really fungible. No, each atom of gold in the real world is fungible with another one. In the case of the block hashes, which are the digital gold inside the blockchain, they are not fungible because of what I said before. They're created in different circumstances with different amounts of energy, etc. And they have different age, because ones were created 10 years ago and others were created 10 minutes ago. But what they have in common is that in the real world, you can put, let's say, $1 million of gold in a box, like in a central bank, and then the central bank can turn around and issue tokens, which are the US dollar, for example, or British pounds. That can be done with Bitgold, and that's the key. Once you get several non-fungible Bitgold tokens, and you bundle them up into $1 million of value, then you can turn around and issue $1 million of whatever token you want. So definitely, that's a key part of Bitgold. The difference with the current ETC and the current Bitcoin is that token that you create with Bitgold, bundle Bitgold into ingots or Bitgold bars, and then issue the token, is that you can reverse the process. You can redeem the tokens back into Bitgold. So that's the key. That would be a fully backed token. I don't know if I responded to the question, Ross.
Yeah, that helped a lot. Yeah.
Okay. So the things that we spoke about are key. First, that Bitgold ingots, Bitgold hashes or units are not fungible. So they have to, the next step once created is that they have to be transferable, and then you need to be able to buy them and sell them in a market to discover a price for each bundle. And once that is done, then people can freely group them in what we could call metaphorically gold bars. Say gold bars of, let's say, I said $1 million before, but you can create a gold bar of $10,000 in Bitgold and then turn around and issue an ERC20 token against that Bitgold. And that ERC token is convertible back into the original gold bar, and then that gold bar is convertible also into the original Bitgold hashes. So it's totally convertible in one way and in the other, and that is what provides the sound money side, or the sound money feature, which is basically mimicking or imitating the way the original currencies that were backed by gold worked. No, you would have US dollars, and if for some reason you wanted the gold, you would go to the bank and they would give you the gold. Now that doesn't happen, and counterintuitively or ironically, it doesn't happen in Bitcoin either, and it doesn't happen in ETC. So that's the basis of this topic, that Bitgold and ETC have Bitgold buried inside, but their tokens, even though we call them digital gold, which is nearly correct, I would say 99% correct, they would need to be really convertible into Bitgold, which are the non-fungible tokens, which are the block hashes, for us to be able to really call them digital gold. Okay, so what's the idea? Well, I had the idea that when I didn't have the idea. I heard for the first time Nick Szabo talk about the idea in a conference, and he has spoken several times about it. Is that there's a problem? There's a potential problem. We don't know if it's going to be a problem or not, but Bitcoin and ETC as proof of work blockchains, they're not scalable, that we know, and that's not a problem because they can be scalable through layer 2, layer 3 systems. But for now, the security system is paid for by the issuance of new Bitcoins every block and new ETC every block. And that's great, and we are issuing and creating currency every day. The thing is that the monetary policies are set that they're decreasing the payment of blocks, and in the future they're going to go to zero. So at some point, that as a reward system is not going to exist for miners, and it has to be replaced by something, because if not, miners are not going to secure the blockchain anymore. And we are all hoping that the fee system is going to work. I think that the fee system is going to work very well, and it's going to be a very good revenue source for miners. We don't know how much layer 2 systems are going to disintermediate the base layer, and people are going to do all the transactions on layer 2 and never settle anything, or seldomly settle anything on the base layer. For example, today we see that Bitcoin is a hugely popular asset, and there's millions, if not billions, of transactions per day, but everything is happening on layer 2, 3, and 4 systems like exchanges, centralized exchanges. And only 250, 200, 300,000, 350,000 transactions are actually being executed inside Bitcoin, and fees that are very low. And fees are not even close to comparing with the block reward. So what happens if the fee system doesn't work and everything works and everybody's transacting on layer 2 and they don't want to pay high fees at the base layer? So one answer to that is, okay, why don't we go back, now that we do have the technologies of transferring non-fungible tokens, which are the NFTs, and we do have technologies to create decentralized markets inside blockchains. If the fee system doesn't work in the future, why don't we let miners perpetually create Bitgold, just like gold in the real world, that miners, digamos, mine gold every day and they get paid for that gold. Why don't we let them just perpetually create Bitgold, and when they create Bitgold, they just turn it into an NFT and they sell it for whatever currency there is on the blockchain, whatever currency they want, no? And they pay their bills that way. So the idea of integrating Bitgold is to make ETC and BTC even more sound money, because now you are going to have a really convertible currency into digital gold, and to avoid, if there's any risk, or to avoid, if it happens, a problem with the fee system in case it doesn't pay for the future revenues of miners. Does anybody have a question about this second concept, about what would be the purpose of integrated Bitgold?
My question is, how does Bitgold have value? Like, how would the market, how would they put a price on the NFT?
Well, no, that's a good question, and that's more of a economics thing, I guess. That the idea is, if Bitcoin is working now and ETCs are working now, it's because, and even though they are not backed by anything, just by their own algorithmic scarcity and features of transferability, divisibility, etc. So Bitgold, and through the technologies of NFTs and markets and the ability to convert them into ERC20 tokens and back, that should digamos, have the same economic incentives as real gold in the real world and real currencies in the real real world. The way to, you mean the way to discover the value of each NFT, of each Bitgold?
Well, like, for example, ETC and Bitcoin have a use case because you need to use it in order to pay for transaction fees and in order to use the network. So yeah, there's like a fundamental value to that. And if the network is expected to grow, then you could speculate on that future usage. Yeah. But in the case of an NFT, how would the market determine or speculate on its future price or utility?
Bueno, Bitcoin and ETC have like you said, a primary economic use, economic function, which is to pay for rewards of blocks and to pay for fees. So that they're born with an economic need, with an economic function. So that's a very good observation. But they also have evolved into having a general economic function in the world, because they're being used as stores of value and for payments, no? So evidently they're also, because they have the primary value, they also get the secondary value. In the case of Bitgold, they would, I don't know if they would not have the primary value, because the creation itself is the payment to the reward. So they do have an initial economic value, a primary economic value of being a reward to the miner, because the creation of the Bitgold itself should have value because of its scarcity and its analogy to gold, and that creates value for the miner. In terms of payment for fees, bueno, my guess is that, say that if we had a theoretical blockchain that was born as Bitgold, so it would have many blocks with Bitgold, they would all be turned into NFTs, and those would be turned into ERC20 tokens, and the fees would be paid with those ERC20 tokens to incentivize the miners to pay, to include the transactions, no? So I would say the fee part would be a little bit weaker, maybe. But I think it would be similar. I mean, the basic fundamental characteristics of Bitgold is that it has the same scarcity and features of gold in the real world. I don't know if I answered your question. Tora.
Yeah, I think I understand.
It's a weak response. It's a weak response because it's not as direct as Bitcoin and ETC, clearly.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I wanted to actually just add on to the monetary backing, because just to have a look at Ethereum Classic in the last few days, especially with the FTX collapse, you see the fluctuation in price, but that's simply because we know that, well, Ethereum Classic, it kind of relies on the value of Ethereum, but what you've noticed since the market volatility within the last 2 weeks, what we noticed in the charts is that the Ethereum Classic to Ethereum pair, through the downtrend of market price, it actually held its dominance. So should the capital come back into the market, we're seeing quite a rise for Ethereum Classic's price because it's been holding dominance. So my question is, how would we actually give the native token or the new token its value, especially in the market climate that we have now? Because with the core Ethereum Classic, we've been within this market downtrend. We might see a decline in the price, yes, but if you're looking at the Ethereum to Bitcoin pair and the Ethereum to Ethereum Classic pair, it's actually looking quite strong in the downtrend, and I think the fruits will come as soon as the market goes to risk on. But my question is, how would you really give this new native token or the new token its value in terms of projecting forward, if that makes sense? I mean, especially because Ethereum, it moved over to proof of stake over the last month, and the alternative is Ethereum Classic. Look at Ravencoin. Just comparing Ravencoin and Zilliqa and whatever proof of work coins, you would have noticed that it is actually Ethereum Classic that is holding the dominance. And it's funny because the rest of the pairs that are also proof of work are actually falling in dominance, and this is just a precursor for what's to come should market risk go back into play. So this is actually, just to interject, this is actually a critical time to make, how can I say, changes or fundamental changes that you can reap rewards in the future. But I'm actually sitting in question wondering, why would we introduce a new token at a critical time like this when we are in fact holding our dominance? And if you look at the markets, you'd see that not many tokens are doing that. And I actually have to take my hat off a little bit to Ethereum Classic as well as ADA, because throughout the market downtrend of FTX, you would have noticed that everything has been falling down except Ethereum Classic, which is actually a very good sign for the foundation that we have built on. So I'm just wondering, how are we going to navigate the Bitcoin Gold situation moving forward? And also, can we maybe have a visual representation as to how you want to go about doing this and integrating it?
Yes. The two comments that you made I totally agree with. One is ETC is already valuable. It's working. How would we do this in a way that we don't interrupt the current success of ETC? ETC, I totally agree, is a total success. I totally agree that in the current short-term market situation, it's incredibly strong, even against Bitcoin and Ethereum. So your question is, how would we do a migration in gold that it doesn't interrupt this success? That's one.
Exactly, because we're standing at the point of a bit of a crossroads. We can either go into a success story when market risk comes on, because we have the foundation. It's just aesthetics at this point. Because, example, in terms of the Discord, we were just discussing yesterday in the Discord community call, just the general, that if you look at it, we have such a good product, and we're holding quite strong. Is it maybe not just the aesthetics of things and the community that we need to build, if that makes sense? Because we have a good token, we have a great token actually, and it actually beats a lot of the fundamentals that are out there. We are not deflationary, we are not increasing supply, We are not doing this thing where we're going to just add on tokens if we are not doing too well in the market. You know, we built on fundamentals. There's a reason that code is law. So I'm just wondering, like, isn't this maybe that pivotal point where we can build on the active community with what we have? Because the standing in the market in terms of our metrics, we are looking extremely good. We were up in terms of dominance levels and in terms of dominance on market and in terms of Ethereum to Bitcoin pair. During the downtrend in terms of USDT price, we were increasing in terms of market share. We were actually increasing in terms of Ethereum Classic to Ethereum pair by about 2% in a downward trend. That's a good thing because it's only for price to start to reflect that. But it can only be reflected when the risk comes on. And this is really my main concern because we are sitting at a pivotal point. But if we can just build on a good community that, and I'm actually quite happy and I'm excited for the aesthetic team that you guys are introducing, the goals, the marketing team, because if we can really just engage and go out there and start bringing people in, new customers, new money. One thing I also noticed, and I don't want to tackle too much on the FTX situation, but you would have noticed that Alameda Market Research Facilities, because they were a big market maker, they had a very big move. They had a very big hand in how the total market cap moves. So if you're looking at the market cap per day, you would have noticed huge vector candles coming into the market cap, pushing price up or down. But since the collapse of FTX of the last few days, you would have noticed that price is actually just a little bit static. And it's new people coming into the market. So you have an abundance of people or an abundance of market makers coming out, which was Alameda Market Research. But now price is kind of more organic than anything else. And if this really reflects its true value of how Ethereum Classic is not affected, then I'm sorry to say, but in the future, we are looking at a very, very good product.
Yeah, I agree. ETC is performing very well in the market, and I'm sure Istora is going to let us talk about market at the end. But to respond to your question about why and how, the how I'm going to talk about now, how to migrate to Bitgold inside ETC. But in terms of why and when, it's just an idea. So this can be rejected as an idea, and if it's done, I would suggest doing it sometime in the future, in a few years or something like that. It's just an idea that I posted for the community to be aware that one, that ETC is really Bitgold, but it's buried inside, and that the ETC currency is a community fiat currency that is created on top of Bitgold. And that we could actually migrate to Bitgold, the pure Bitgold in the future, if the fee system doesn't work and for other purposes. So this is just a conversation that Istora organized to talk about Bitgold, but it's not a current change that is proposed for now. So did I respond to your question?
Getting there. Nice.
What?
We are getting there. Let's discuss further.
Okay. Bueno,
Can I throw something in there? I think earlier you were talking about how miners early on had a huge advantage for mining those hashes. I was wondering if the inflation of Bitgold would be optimal for the health of the network long term, whereas in the initial scarcity of ETC, the token we have now or currency we have now, was good for the short term as far as incentivizing keeping the network up. I think that was touched on, but I'm not sure if those were kind of like the conclusions you were making there.
Well, that's a great point.
Yeah,
that's a great point. I didn't touch it yet, and the ETC current model has a great advantage, which is that it algorithmically tends to zero. So it's even harder money than gold, because gold has been being issued on a yearly basis with a dilution of 1.7% more or less on a yearly basis. So the difficulty of extracting gold from nature, plus the return on capital of gold miners, has found an equilibrium where gold miners are satisfied by creating 1.7% more of the stock of gold per year in the world. No, so in the case of Bitgold, it would transform the monetary policy of ETC into a perpetual inflation that should be around also 1 and 2%, similar to gold, as compared to the zero inflation that ETC is going to have in the future. So that's the con, that you are migrating from zero inflation, which is the current projected inflation of ETC, to a perpetual 1 or 2% inflation, which is what happened in reality with gold. That is going to be accomplished by adjusting the difficulty in ETC and to making it difficult enough for miners to be willing to invest capital to create no more than 1 or 2% of ETC every year in the future, if there's a migration to Bitgold.
Right.
So that's the inflation. Yeah, we would be changing to a perpetual inflationary system.
Can I jump in here and ask a question? Because I guess I misunderstood based on that comment about inflation. So this is a new token that is also issuing additional ETC. Because from what you explained before, I assumed that no additional ETC would be created, and it's just issuing a completely separate thing. So the supply of ETC would remain as it stands. It's just there's like an additional asset that's not ETC on top of that. So it's not really changing the monetary policy per se, but just adding an additional benefit to incentivize continued mining.
No, I misspoke. When we migrate to Bitgold, the only new issuance by miners is going to be Bitgold, not ETC. And the stock of Bitgold inside ETC is going to grow by between 1 and 2% per year. So it's going to have perpetual issuance and perpetual inflation, but it's not going to be new issuance of ETC. Sorry, I misspoke there. It was a brain glitch. So what's going to happen is that every year there's going to be new Bitgold being created at a 1 or 2% rate of the existing stock. And that new Bitgold can be used to create Bitgold bars, and those Bitgold bars can be transformed into ERC20 tokens. And there's going to be many ERC20 tokens, of which 1, 2, or 3 are going to be the prevailing ones, like in any currency system. And those tokens can be used to pay for fees so that the miners include new transactions into the new blocks. So miners are going to have a revenue, 1, by selling the Bitgold NFTs each time they produce one, if they wish. And 2, ERC20 tokens, which will be paid to them for including transactions. That's the future of the business model of miners with this new system, if it's implemented. And again, this is just an idea that I had a year ago, and it can be implemented in 5 years or 10 years, or just stay there as a theoretical exercise. We're not proposing here to change ETC monetary policy or model or anything. Now, it's just an idea. Did I respond, Istora?
I think so. So to clarify, it's not new ETC being mined, but it's a new asset that could be used to pay for transactions instead of ETC.
Yeah, well, the migration is going to be, today we're issuing 2.56 ETC per block. If we were to change tomorrow, there's no more issuance of ETC. It would not exist anymore as an issuance anymore. And the miners just are going to generate a hash, and then they have to sell the hash in the market and see how much people want to pay for them in the market. So no more ETC. So that's what would happen once we migrate. what happens to the existing stock of 136 million ETC of the past? That is the core of my idea that I can explain now. But ETC would cease to exist as a new coin, as a new issued coin. I don't know if that is clear, Istora.
Yeah, why don't you go into some of the implementation details, because some of these questions might be answered that way.
Okay, so say that in 5 years in the future, and sometime in the future at a specific block, say at block 25 million or block 30 million, we just say, okay, on block 30 million and 1, we're going to migrate to Bitgold, no? So at that time, there's going to be, say, 150 million ETC issued already in the market, and those ETC are not backed by anything. So if we migrate from one system to the other, we might destroy the value of the existing stock of ETC, or I don't know what could happen. I mean, it's very complex in terms of economics. So what I say is that since the genesis of Ethereum Classic in 2015, since block 1, there has been Bitgold created each block, which is the block hash. The only problem is that those blocks are not fungible there, and they're not transferable. But today we have the technologies of NFTs. So those blocks could perfectly be turned into NFTs, which is how the Bitgold works. And so all the miners of the past 15, 16, 17 million blocks, I don't know in what block we are now, 17 million and something, I think, can be credited those digital gold hashes to their account, to the historical account that they use to get paid, is block 1, and those those would be turned into NFTs. So now those block hashes are fungible and transferable. Once that happens, it doesn't mean that the miner has free access to that. The miner, if they want to get the NFTs, they would have to get the amount of ETC that they were paid for that specific block in the past, and send it to a smart contract. And when they do that, those ETC would be burnt and disappear, and the miner would have the free Bitgold NFT free to transfer in their account. So the idea is at the time of the conversion into Bitgold, if it happens, in the future, all miners are never going to get ETC again. They're only going to get their NFT representing their block hash, which is the Bitgold. And for the stock of ETC of the past and all the Bitgold that is trapped inside ETC, they can get it just by being owners of their account. They say that the miner, now say he produced block 5 million, and that was several years ago. The block hash of that block, number 5 million, is going to be credited to his account as an NFT, and he's going to go with a private key for that account, and he has to buy 5 ETC, because at that time the reward was 5 ETC. So he has to get 5 ETC, send it to a smart contract, burn it, and then with his private key he can have access to his Bitgold of block 5 million. And like that, all the 15, 17, 18 million blocks of the past, which should match largely, not largely, it should match a good amount of the stock of ETC to be convertible into ETC. So whoever wants the past NFTs of Bitgold, they just convert the ETC, burn it, and they get their past Bitgold. There is one problem though, but I want to know if you guys understood this part. I don't know if I explained this part okay, Istor, if it's okay.
Yeah, I think I got that part.
Can I cut in just a bit, Donald?
Yes.
So, related to NFTs and actually the contract that is backed by gold, is gold the best thing in terms of let's say value that can be transferred? Like you can back NFTs like with art or with cars or a lot of things from what people consume. Gold is, let's say, I really see a market where you can use this type of contracts for buying jewelry and own it forever or something like that. And which is easy to transfer via, I don't know, services that provide this type of transfer of physical gold. So the question is, what other products may appear on ETC given this open and free market?
Well, I think your question is a question about NFTs, and NFTs are basically protocol or standard, and it's the ERC 721 standard that creates a unique unit on the blockchain that is not fungible and is transferable, and that unique unit is not used for anything except for representing other assets. For example, the most popular ones are images and art and stuff like that. Bueno, that layer of the technology, which is the ERC 721 technology, the protocol or the standard of creating non-fungible units on the blockchain, can be used for anything. I think in the future they're going to be used for not only digital art but physical art and physical things like cars, trucks, airplanes, real estate, farms, apartments, hotel rooms. They're going to be used for everything, and they could be used for gold. I mean, if somebody has a gold bar somewhere and they want to turn it into an NFT, and people believe that the NFT really represents that gold bar, then yes, it could be. The physical world, I think, can be represented as NFTs in the blockchain world. In this case, it's an NFT, exactly the same. Each Bitgold unit would be represented by a ERC 721, but it would be much more secure because the actual asset that it represents is inside the blockchain, and it's totally verifiable inside the security of the blockchain. So in this case, Bitgold NFTs represent block hashes, and they are much more secure because they're convertible in both directions inside the blockchain.
Okay, thanks.
But the Istor's question of implementation is important. So how do we migrate from the current situation where each block is just stored in the network? It's not an NFT, and we are issuing and printing an artificial token per block. And also, there's another benefit of using Bitgold as opposed to printing an artificial token like ETC or BTC, which is that those tokens, BTC and ETC, can actually be changed. Those tokens are not protected by proof of work. Those tokens are protected just by social consensus. So if by social consensus we go crazy, and in the future we want to change the ETC monetary policy and start printing 100 ETC per block, we can do it. Those are not protected by the proof of work work itself and the hashes. Those are protected just by social consensus and the ECIP process. So it's absolutely subjective. Although it is true that it's extremely difficult to change the ETC monetary policy by now, but it's even more difficult or practically impossible to change the monetary policy when you have Bitgold, because Bitgold, the only way of producing it, there's no subjective side to Bitgold. It's purely work of machines. That's it. That's the only way of creating Bitgold. So what?
I was saying that's a really good point. I'd also like to throw in that the healthy inflation of Bitgold is something ideal for my DAO protocol. But yeah, keep going.
Yeah, so Bitgold is the real thing, and it was the real thing that Nick Szabo and the cypherpunks created in 1997, 98, and that was the original idea of Bitcoin. The thing is that because NFT didn't exist and they didn't know how to transfer these things, and decentralized markets didn't exist, so they didn't know how to, like it was asked, how to define the economic value of a non-fungible Bitgold. They just didn't do it, and they said, let's just print some coin that we make up per block and see what happens. And that's how Bitcoin was created. So this distinction between Bitcoin and Bitgold, which are the block hashes, is very important for all of you to have in your minds. The coin itself is a 100% subjective construct. And the only thing that protects that, and the only thing that protects Bitcoin from not starting to print 100 or 1,000 Bitcoins per block next month, is that the global community would be totally against that, and that they can fork if they don't like it, and all the other things of permissionlessness and censorship resistance. But the Bitgold itself is the pure Bitgold are the block hashes. That's the real pure monetary policy. The con is that it has perpetual inflation, and it's going to be created forever, like gold.
Donald, just to clarify again, you said that the supply cap of the ETC will be unchanged, but would this affect perhaps anything to do with the mining capabilities on ETC? Like, is it going to affect the halving? What is there any fundamental effects to the main mining net of this? Should it be implemented?
No, regarding the monetary policy, basically says that for all the blocks of the future, there's going to be a designated amount of ETC created per block and paid to the miner for doing the work and including the transactions and sending the block, and spending in electricity. And that is set in the protocol, and it's every 5 million blocks, it goes down by 20%, and until it's going to reach 0 in the year 2140. That is totally independent and delinked from the hash rate or the mining technology or the mining effort in itself. Whether there's more miners or less miners will not accelerate or change the rhythm at which they get paid. So if that was the question, no. If there's more miners or less miners, there's only going to be X amount of coins issued per block, and that's a different parameter within the protocol. Was that your question? Did I answer?
Yeah, you did. I just wanted to know if the proposal that you are speaking about, the Bitcoin Gold, if we do move down that direction in the future, obviously by community consensus, it wouldn't affect the Ethereum Classic algorithm fundamentally. Is what I'm asking.
I think I will have to go into more detail, and I don't think we have time because it's already 1 hour. But I think that it wouldn't change. I think that we can do this with a smart contract rather than changing the base protocol. The base protocol would have to be changed a little bit, just for example, not printing any more ETC.
Yes.
But then with a smart contract could and then NFTs with ERC21 tokens, we can create the NFTs and have the markets where miners can sell their Bitgold, and then we have another smart contract to bundle up the Bitgold and create ERC20 tokens. So in general, the majority would be ERC20, smart contracts rather than protocol changes.
Yes, I understand. Thank you.
Well, Etcetera, I think we have 1 hour, and maybe we could do the second part in another call.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you for the explanation so far, and we can definitely continue it. It's a very intriguing idea that I think deserves a lot more thought as a means to solve the fee market problem, if it indeed it is one. But yeah, this seems like a way that could be perpetually funding the incentivization of miners, and definitely something that should be looked into more, I think.
The two benefits are that it would solve if there is for now we have an imaginary potential problem, which is the fee market. I think that Ethereum, when it was proof of work, proved that the fee market is possible for it to be successful, because at certain times, actually, the fees paid to miners was more than the rewards, because the fees were very high. And that's what my vision for ETC. My vision for ETC and Bitcoin is that the fees per transaction are going to be very high. That's why we're going to be using layer 2 systems. So that's one benefit. The other benefit, Etcetera, is that the Bitgold monetary policy is much more secure, in the sense that it's zero subjective. And to produce Bitgold, you just need to work and produce it. There's no other way of producing it. Whereas BTC and ETC, you can just change the parameters subjectively by social consensus, and that's it.
Sounds good. So yeah, I think we should revisit this in a future call, and I'll probably have some more questions once I think about the implications. There's a lot of obviously side effects and economic changes that it might entail, and based on different approaches, maybe there's ways to achieve it without having any negative effects whatsoever, in a way that's completely compatible with the existing emission curve. But yeah, definitely something we should look at in future.
Yes, I agree. And just for everybody to be to know and not fear, is that this is just an idea, and we can spend years debating it and make the change in the future. It's not an immediate change or a proposal for the short term.
It might be that we're all dead by the time it's needed to be implemented anyway. So maybe something for future generations to use as food for thought as well.
Yes.
Okay, Donald, thanks for the presentation / Q&A about Bitgold, and we will hopefully be talking about this again in a future call. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for having me to talk about Bitgold.
Okay, so on to the next topic in the agenda. We are, as Donald mentioned, over an hour already. So I will quickly jump through some sort of mini announcements. One is that Bob recently did a talk at a Bitmain conference, which is worth looking at. He outlined the vision of ETC as being the uncensorable global computer, as opposed to Ethereum that is being censored right now by MEV boost and OFAC compliance of validators. So that's well worth a look at, and you can find the link in the agenda. He also announced at that conference the Gnosis Safe Multisig, as we talked about, as well as Ampool converting 10 million of its funding commitment to ETC, which is now locked in a Gnosis Safe Multisig. And there's already a website up. I don't have the link in the agenda yet, but I'll add it at the end. That is about the ETC funding DAO, which will, I guess, in the near term be publishing some announcements about how we may be able to apply for grants on ETC using this generous funding model provided by Ample Official. So keep an eye out in the future for that. Also, ETC Cooperative announced that their communications are also going to be in Chinese from now on, which is great. And hopefully we'll get more cross-pollination between the east and west sides of the Ethereum Classic community, thanks to that. On a similar note, I wanted to announce that the Ethereum Classic website now supports multiple languages, and it's actually finally shipped now. And we have the crowd-in translation contribution system also integrated. So you can find links if you are interested in helping with translations in the agenda. We have a automatic machine-generated translations generated for the entire website, and they're not perfect by any means, but it's a starting point for real-world people to check and update and make sure those translations are correct before it gets merged into the master branch. So if you are a native speaker of any of one of the languages that's currently supported, I think we have 12 up there right now, the 12 most popular languages and a couple of exceptions, you can visit the link in the agenda to help us out with that. So you can also DM me on Discord. Now, there is another topic that we should probably discuss this week, just as part of the free talk bit. But then relating to that, there's another topic that I think we'll put into a future call because it warrants a bit more discussion there. Those two topics are the recent FTX collapse and the fallout of that. And then there's also a project called Rico, which is a next generation version of Rye, which in turn was the next generation version of DAI, which I think is well worth talking about as it's a fully decentralized implementation of a stable coin, which I think is something that the ecosystem badly needs right now, not just Ethereum, but the cryptocurrency space in general, to avoid disasters like the FTX collapse, which let's talk about. Does anyone have any initial comments? Or I'll try and summarize what happened, but basically, as far as I can tell, there was some a hedge fund starting with I forgot the name, Alamina or something, that was making bad trades and got bailed out by FTX, which is a major exchange that was well regulated. And they were using user funds to basically shore up the bad trades that were made. And CZ of Binance basically liquidated a bunch of FTX, which caused a bank run on FTX, which then caused cascading liquidations of FTX to the point where it became almost worthless. The exchange went down, people were unable to withdraw, and a bunch of applications also were affected by this because the FTX that was used to back their project or provide liquidity for their project also became worthless. So that has major impacts and side effects throughout the ecosystem, including directly other projects getting hit, but also potential future reactions from regulators. And yeah, I'm sure that you've all been following it, but it's a complete mess up, basically, in the lightest way.
Yeah, and so I'll just chime in here because our protocol was affected by it via multi-chain, their bridge. What they ended up doing was multi-chain pause all of the exchange networks. So many of these exchanges have their token, and what they saw with BNB is BNB fired up, their own proprietary chain to do, DEX style settlements, even though the consensus layer is centralized. And so like Gate has a network, Huobi has a network, OKEX has a network, and KuCoin has a network. And so what they did was they paused all of those because they were worried about exchange bank runs in stable coins, right? And so what was the whole concept of ETC swap was to get stable coins onto ETCs. So the exact assets that were at risk of having a run and still could be at risk of being a run until we have proof of reserves of all of those exchanges. You're seeing it with crypto.com right now. Oh, and that was another one that got paused as well. And so I sent out, right when I saw that, I sent out a tweet saying, hey, withdraw all your liquidity out of any multi-chain liquidity out of ETC network now, so you're not affected. And so that's where you've seen total value locked drop. And that's because of ETC swap and its goal, which is to bring real liquidity into our ecosystem. Like we could, print a air token and just set a random price to ETC and say, oh, our token's worth, $1, right? And then, oh, we have a total locked value of, $1 million in there because we've locked this air token. But that is literally exactly what FTX just did with their FTT token. Is what they did was they took their centralized exchange, they set up an FTT market, they controlled over 80% of the supply of the token. Please look at tokens on Ethereum Classic and notice the supply and who controls it and who can set the price of it. Those are warning signs. CZ has tweeted this. This is warning signs, just like FTT. Okay, so just keep your mind on that. That's a disclaimer to the general public. And then what you can do is you can just wash trade your token, pump up the volume on it. You don't have very many holders or sellers. Hopefully you convince anyone that's holding it to hold, and then you can set a price and then you can dump. And so what FTT and FTX actually did was a little bit different. Of what they did was they took the FTT token, pumped up the price, and then they went from being Alameda Research and doing, market making and those type of activities to taking this token and getting loans, collateralized loans with the underlying asset being FTT at a valuation that they pump the price to. Right. And so they take, a couple $1 million and pump up the FTT total market cap to billions of dollars. Then they go and they take a $1 billion loan with that FTT token. Right. And so it's imaginary collateral. So now they've got this loan. And then what they started doing, and this is where like people that have been around the space will recognize this and realize, oh my gosh, this is going to be a very big deal for a very long time. This isn't a 24-hour thing or a 1-week thing, because then what they did was they took that borrowed money and then they invested in the entire crypto ecosystem. Right. And so then they got all these tokens that they can dump and do all sorts of shady things with. But it's essentially, what they're calling a contagion. Right. And so you don't know how far it stretches. They borrowed and lended money all over the place. And so there's going to be exchanges in the back, centralized exchanges, deal with each other. They have liquidity accounts with each other and move funds back and forth. OTC desks, market makers are pulling liquidity and getting off the table right now. I mean, there is a massive thing going on. And so, anyways, this is going to ripple through, and we're not going to know until you start seeing it on chain. Either prices are dumping on a random token due to someone having to liquidate their balance sheet to stay afloat, or you'll start seeing people get bought up in the Binance relief fund that they're doing. Or you'll see it just pop up and they'll fold, like BlockFi, right? BlockFi has closed its shop and it'll be gone. But anyway, so I just want to frame that what happened with ETC swap and why the total value locked went down is because there's real assets and real value there. It's not imaginary funds. It's not air tokens like FTT. None of that shit, and so it makes a ton of sense to pull your liquidity out, get it into the safe native network, wait everything out, and then when the dust settles, we figure out a different way to build up DeFi where it doesn't revolve around that bridge, which that's a great bridge. It has a ton of TVL in there. The problem is that if they're going to pause and do things like that, there's the risk, right? That's not how we can build. And that leads into kind of what you're talking about, Astora. That's where I'm going is I see the Rico stuff because of the MakerDAO founder died. So so that circulated around the Rico document. And that's an interesting project. We've talked about Rye, and now we're talking about Rico. But to build DeFi on ETC, like, it's going to take a while, but we'll get there, and it's not going to be clean, right? There will be mistakes made. The great news here is that if you can get your value out of those multi-chain assets, you'll lose absolutely no money. And you're safe and good to go, right? So it's about risk management. It seemed like a great decision at the time, but now we're seeing, hey, if they're going to pause bridge out functionality, that's their response. That's not something that we want to build an entire DeFi stack around as a foundation. And I think that's where Rico comes in. We do need a stable coin that is resilient, and you need that to have real liquidity on your network. And that's why Tether is such a big deal for centralized exchanges, right? And so we need to have something similar on this network natively. And that's just where I think DeFi needs to go. So that's just my take on it.
Yeah, I think it's always going to be whenever you have some kind of centralized service, and typically, I mean, even before Rico doesn't exist yet, so every stablecoin has some kind of counterparty risk at some point, whether it's an oracle or a governance system or just a company going bust. Currently, there isn't really a decentralized stablecoin, so these kind of things are always going to happen. And if you want to have a market with US dollars, then you're going to have to accept some kind of counterparty risk. So things like this are natural and should be expected until we have like a real decentralized alternative, which we don't.
Yeah, and even if we had USDC, and Tether, these companies can pause an address and blacklist an address. But even if we had those natively issued on our network, it'd be a much different thing. It's like the weakest link in our current situation is that we don't have the native assets there issued by these big players. That you still have trust in all of that, but at least it's issued on ETC, and then you have all that hash rate to secure it. When you start doing bridges, it's like it's the weakest link. It's where is you in multi-chain situation, it appears to be their signatures, right? If they're going to pause, then that's the weakest link, because now it's like, okay, well, can they just decide anytime they want to stop a network from being able to bring liquidity back to its native chain? And so we just and that's another thing. It's like price oracles, decentralized stable coins, and then bridges are extremely hard, and it's been something that people have been trying to solve for quite a while, and to do that in a decentralized way is just extremely challenging.
Yeah, I think I also saw that wrapped Bitcoin on one of the EVM chains has depegged as well, so same kind of problem there.
Yeah, and wrapped Bitcoin is backed by a huge player, right? And so so that might just be liquidity reserves on the exchanges. But when I alerted in the Discord of wrapped Bitcoin, I just had woke up and I took a look at it and just saw red candles dropping, and I was like, oh man, here we go. And I think we'll see that all over the place. These low friction points will be stressed all over as liquidity is trying to move as quickly as possible back to the native chains. And wrapped Bitcoin's a prime example. It's like, okay, wrapped Bitcoin, it's backed by a huge player. It's on Ethereum, right? So now it's proof of stake. But even so, people with the wrapped Bitcoin are saying, I need to get that Bitcoin back onto the Bitcoin network and onto my keys. And that's exactly why it's depegging, right? And then any wrapped Bitcoin on these other smaller EVMs, of course, they're going to depeg like wild, right? Because it's essentially a bank run on the wrapped getting on unwrapping, right? So, and getting back to the native chain. So anyways, just, a word of caution as just like someone that's been in the space for a while. This is a humongous event, like Mount Gox style event, and it's not done. So, some people are like, oh, it's already blown over, and trying to get their money like right back into work and everything. But, I don't think that's a wise decision. I think it's really safe to learn about self-custody right now. Take the time to do an OPSEC update, get all your coins back into your possession, and just let everything fall how it's going to fall, and then the markets will be back. It's just, this is volatility, but the volatility that you don't want is if you lose your coins or not. That's bad volatility. It's great to have price volatility, but you don't want bankruptcy volatility.
Sounds like that stablecoin is pretty important.
Sorry, could you repeat that, Ross?
I was saying, it sounds like that stablecoin is pretty important. I'm a little bit naive to finances, so I don't really recognize like how important it is. I'm more on the tech side, fascinated by the immutability of the blockchain. But it sounds like that stablecoin is becoming something more of a priority day by day.
Yeah, if you want to kind of understand how important stablecoins are, we didn't have very big stablecoins until like Tether really showed up on the scene, and Tether has grown to be a massive asset. It's just a safe, it's a place where people run to take profits and do all of that without going all the way to a bank account. And so, when you're talking about having exchange, everyone prices everything in US dollars, right? Or the world mostly does. And so having an asset like that on a network is extremely important if you're trying to do trades on that network. Otherwise, you lose that security. Everything that we do with the proof of work, all of these positions and everything, we start losing that when you are relying on things outside of our native network. So the issue with that is that it's really hard to build up with bootstrap funds native assets. So it's going to take big players coming in. So we'll see how our positioning is good, our hash rate's good, all those things. But DeFi is going to be a bumpy road on ETC, but we'll get there. It's not going to be like, oh, that was first try. Okay, good to go.
I see what Ronan's on about. He's saying that it's better we have a stable token that's dedicated to us, because if our stable tokens are at the mercy of other players, then whatever happens with that, we could actually be in the trash can because of it. So I actually side with what Ronan is saying, that obviously with a lot more thoughts, that the stable coin does sound like a good idea that is kind of home to us. But being at the mercy of others stable coins, we could be subject to lots of market manipulation. And one of the troublesome thing is the example of Luna with USD with their stable coin. So it's and just the ripple effect of things like Solana and FTX that unfortunately does have a ripple effect on the rest of the market, including the tokens that they hosted, FTT, Solana. So having a stable token to us it's actually a great idea moving forward, because I think it can keep the intrinsic value of Ethereum Classic based solely on the products that we offer fundamentally and our development as a team. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, and just to point back to kind of what you were saying a bit earlier on this call, where you were saying we are making gains during this downtrend, like that's exactly it. Is that if we start having a native stable coin that's really pegged around the ETC ecosystem, that those gains, those will stay here, right? We won't be affected by Solana or any of these outside networks, at least not as much. So I thought that was really good what you were bringing up in terms of looking at how ETC is performing during all of this volatility and this downtrend. It's extremely strong right now, and that comes from doing things the correct way.
No, that is 100% true. And the thing is with this, it's simply because that the fundamentals are right. The supply cap doesn't change, code is low, etc., etc. And just the fact that, and perhaps it's a small blessing in disguise that Ethereum Classic is kind of strict with the type of developments that we put on the mainnet. It's because look at the example of I don't know what, so many things have happened this year, but there are so many platforms that people decided to build their apps on, and unfortunately their apps are at the mercy of the mainnet. And if that thing goes down, then it's all kaput. But looking at how we've been performing from a fundamental basis and not a financial basis. Yes, you do have the grayscales. Yes, you do have the investors' point of view, which is obviously the financial side of things. But looking at it from a technical perspective, you see, we couldn't necessarily as a miner and also as a holder, I couldn't see it on the chart, just the value of Ethereum Classic when you do see a market climb. When the market climbs, everything is green. You see green across the dominance, you see a green on the market cap. You see it reflect in the price. But it's very funny and it's very interesting to see that when everything is red, and I'm look, this entire year has been a multi-month bear market, but just looking at it, there are small moments where you can actually see that Ethereum to the Ethereum pair, the Ethereum Classic to Ethereum pair, and the Ethereum to the Bitcoin pair, which is very strong in the market, and they're all about what is Bitcoin, how much dominance of the market does it have now? It's 40%, and Ethereum Classic sits at Ethereum itself sits at 19% of the dominance. And just to see how we are climbing in terms of dominance on these pairs that are holding most of the dominance of the market, I can only imagine that when the market's risk does come on, we will be climbing, because in the downtrend we are making gains on the fundamental side of things, instead of our fundamentals or the value of our fundamentals also going down the drain with a bear market. That's the worst position you can be in, because should the market risk come back, you're not going to see the intrinsic value of your token, because the gains are really made in the downtrend. And it has really been a fascinating thing to see, because we all know that how many coins are out there on the markets these days, and most of them really mean nothing. But you can really see the value of things in the market downtrend, and there has not been a lot of tokens been doing this. Ethereum has been holding its dominance. You see Ethereum sitting now at $1,200, but a couple of months ago, this should have actually technically been lower. Just look at the price of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is sitting at 16,000. At around this price point in the beginning of the year, when we made the wick low to 17,200, Bitcoin went all the way down to 900. We did the same thing last week, yet Ethereum is now holding its strength and is holding its price. The same thing can be said when we're talking about Bitcoin. In the wick low in the beginning of the year, Bitcoin went down to 17,200. In Ethereum went all the way down to about 12, but now we're holding at 20. Yet Bitcoin is now at 16,000. So can you imagine that we are holding the dominance, and this is why we're actually holding support at certain price levels. And it's really because we have been built on a good foundation, and this doesn't necessarily change. So with a good product like this, I think moving forward in the right direction and actually putting a plan out there that backs us in terms of the intrinsic value, in terms of development and technical fundament, or the technical basis, if we can figure out a way, and I'm kind of leaning towards the concept, at least, that Donald has, is that if we are sitting with such a good product, we should actually think outside of the box as to how we can maintain this. Because look, I'll be honest with you, give it about 5-10 years, you will see a lot of these tokens will actually be flushed out of the market, and you can kind of see it. You can kind of see it across the board if you're not built on the correct fundamentals and the correct and the correct principles, the correct code. If you decide to build a token that has this everlasting changes or this flexible properties, you're kind of bending the rules. But this is the thing that Ethereum Classic has been built on. We built on a solid foundation, and this solid foundation only comes fruitful down the line. And just holding dominance and holding the levels where we're at right now with this crazy market conditions, and not just market conditions, but global conditions, just to see where we are now. We might not be in like the greatest and most amazing price points that we were maybe last year, January, 170. We might be low right now, but if we continue this pace at which we're on, holding our fundamentals and just discussing a way forward, with a bit more in depth as to how we can hold our intrinsic value in terms of our mainnet itself, I really think we are looking at a great product. And I think we can like, this is obviously my first engagement into the community calls, but I've been a holder for Ethereum Classic for quite a while, and I know what I'm dealing with. I know the technology or the value of the technology that we are dealing with. And as things become more and more, how can I say, I wouldn't say fake in the crypto industry, but there's a lot of artificial tokens out there that doesn't really have a value. You know this, and just to see that Ethereum's value holding out in this terrible market conditions, in obviously compounded on other factors in the world, it's just fascinating to see that this was always the right direction. And just to be built on top of this, I think we are sitting with a good community, and it's really the small things that can engage a more active community, get more investment into the system or into projects moving forward. I think even in this bit of a questionable year, I think we are holding strong, and I look forward to development and some more community calls where we can discuss a solid way forward. We are looking good, and also I personally I'm trading on Binance, and I think that Binance, they model that they or suggested that they do this proof of reserves things, is it will actually help us. And even when they put out that announcement, we didn't experience much volatility on our side in terms of our market price in looking at the Ethereum Classic price itself. So even with those big changes in the market, Binance has actually been, I think they've been pulling their weight to a certain degree, and we would say that their credibility across the board, it also proves true during this types of market conditions. But there's the basic principles go across the board. You need a fundamental product that is immovable, that is of quality, and you will only kind of realize that during this downtrend. If people don't realize it at this point, well, they'll kind of miss out in the long run when risk on does come.
Yeah, and I think a good thing to note is kind of in this volatility, ETC is holding up well, and that might have a lot to do with back when the Ethereum Foundation tried to dump the price to the ground, and so you have an asset that has been around for about 7 years now, and it's fairly distributed. There's not a lot of insider like pre-mine holding ready to dump ETC whenever they want, and that's kind of what's happening with those other projects that you're talking about that don't have much value and will likely get washed out. Is they had VC pre-mines. Second it went live, they dumped on retail, and then they just have an infinite supply to just dump their own token to the ground. And so you just kind of don't see that here. So in terms of just distribution of the token, I think the DAO fork, that event, was really helpful because Ethereum was very centralized in their pre-mine, and when the DAO fork happened, one of their attack their attack strategies was to dump the price into oblivion, whereas the rest of the crypto community was sitting there buying for dirt cheap. It's how Barry Silbert has such a big position. And then eventually, I think that created the Grayscale Trust, which that's a way to take that position and decentralize it further. So anyways, I think we're really good on that. Regarding the FTX kind of fallout, which was kind of the original bullet point that we're getting on here, was something I didn't note was, we're in a position where we want to build on this network now that this hash rate has come over and has stayed over. But just think that a lot of these VC outfits are likely getting fleeced right now and destroyed. And so I think capital raises to build stuff is going to be pretty tough, at least for a quarter or two. And we'll see if things turn and pivot into a bullish pattern, maybe people get excited again. But I just think capital injection, it's great to see what Bitmain's doing, so I'm excited to watch that. But trying to get other people to join in with big money is going to be difficult, at least in the short term, due to FTX primarily. A big, the big victims there is a lot of hedge funds and a lot of VC firms. So just think about how that money is now completely wrecked. It's not necessarily retail that's just wrecked.
Yeah, I think very good points there, Ronin, and Code 208. And just to riff on this topic, I think that one of the potential, not immediate, but midterm benefits for ETC is that a lot of the culture in crypto has been very kind of wet behind the ears, so to speak. And for a lot of new people, this is their first major centralization failure, so to speak. So I think, especially after watching the recent Bankless podcast, a lot of realizations are being made across the board in the ecosystem of the wider cryptocurrency ecosystem, that the base layer is really important and it needs to be decentralized. And like, there's a big realization that's just happened because of this FTX stuff that is all pointing towards ETC. And if something similar were to happen to Ethereum because of proof of stake, then, well, the value of decentralization is really going to be seen. And I think this, this recent event will shift the pendulum culturally into the OG decentralization cypherpunk philosophy, which is what ETC is all about. So I think going forward, it's probably going to be a really big benefit.
Yeah, and I think I saw something that Monero's up on Bitcoin. It's like doubled up on, and so like privacy is starting to get on people's radar. It's unfortunate because you can preach this all day, every day. Donald can write 1 million blog articles that really lay it out very clearly, but it literally takes people losing money to really get it in their head, like, oh, this is why the foundation is so important. This is why decentralization is, constantly brought up with Bitcoin people, right? And so, I think you're right that this is going to force people into looking at these products. I think something that we can do is we can be there with good material, easily digestible, good language, agnostic material, which I'm so happy that you did the internationalization on the website. I think that was a really smart move. And anyways, yes, we are certainly in a great position. And time and time again, when these markets get flushed out, ETC just climbs the charts, gets stronger, creates a new floor, and gets more users. So it's a good time in our network always.
I think it's an if and when situation. Proof of stake. I honestly think it's an if and when situation. Even though the concept might seem great now, and even though Ethereum might be holding its level now, I really think that it's an if and when situation, because if it unfortunately comes down to human nature. When you do see the collapse of these things, it comes down to human nature, and it's never good for things to be centralized. No matter how creative the product might be, it's when there is too much power in one pool, and that affects the market, then everything is unfortunately at the mercy of the big holder per se. And this is what I like about the decentralization. But it's true what you say, that it's unfortunately going to take a lot of lost capital, and it's going to take a lot of flawed decisions for people to realize that. And it's times like this when the strength really comes through. So agreed.
Following up with the Istora's line of thought, that for so many people, the FTX failure is like a visible and tangible failure of centralization. And in parallel, we have the failure of proof of stake, because don't forget that Ethereum, more than 72% of transactions or blocks are being censored there. And that is exactly what we have been anticipating about proof of stake, how it's centralized, how it's capturable by authorities. All the stakers are identified. They're likely going to be financial institutions. Everything is happening as predicted. And so we have two things that the world are seeing now: the failure of centralization and the failure of proof of stake, because it's capturable by the government, and you can censor it. You can actually censor it. Ethereum is actually censored. I don't know why it hasn't collapsed yet.
Yeah, and Donald, that's a great point. And I believe the FTX hacker is because then that insider hacked the funds, is converting all of their assets to ETH right now. So I think we have a great example of censorship is about to happen to that address, right?
Yeah.
And that will be on display for everyone's going to see that. And then the next line of thought is, well, if they can do that to a hacker, they can do that to anyone, you know? So
yeah,
it'll
exactly.
display that capture.
And they're censoring just innocent people there on Ethereum. And so everything points again to that proof of work, like it was said here. Proof of work is the real solution to all of these things.
I'd also add a third element to this, and that is the collapse of Solana, which, because of its overexposure to FTX, was,
in the middle.
I mean, it's is it dead now? But I mean, it lost a lot of value, and that's basically the way I frame Solana is like the logical extreme of a proof of stake chain that wants to maximize throughput, like Ethereum would have been following the logic of proof of stake there. So Solana might just be a, shall we say, canary in the coal mine for proof of stake chains.
Yeah, and certainly anything that that has those VC pre-mines where a bunch of the failing centralized company has that token on their balance sheet, right? Because they're insolvent, so they're going to have to liquidate. And so Solana, you know, whatever FTX was holding, it's going to get dumped in some way to recoup value to the end user. So I'm sure that Solana is not the only one, you know, in this last cycle. And I think that's what we talk about with the flush and the wash during a bear market. We saw that in 2017 with the ICOs. You know, if you just go back in time and you look at the top 30, 50 coins in 2017 and then look now, it's like, where the fuck are those projects, right? And I think that's going to be the same thing. And then what's going to still be around is that real stuff. ETC, Bitcoin, Dogecoin will be around, you know, these ones that just survive all of these times by not being essentially dark pooled pump and dump schemes.
Preach. Absolutely.
It reminds me of has anyone seen that movie Boiler Room? It's like an older, I want to say a 90s movie. Anyways, if you haven't seen that, check that out. That's what this all reminds me of. Boiler Room.
Yeah, I would say. Sorry, yeah, it is an unfortunate circumstance, the centralization part of it, and it's funny that you mentioned Doge, because even Doge is not centralized. Even the little dog is not centralized, but it just goes to show that there's some fundamental concepts within the crypto industry that unfortunately can't stand the test of time, and that is proof of work. Definitely proof of work. It's been around for a long concept. And again, back to what Donald said about the government having a hand with this centralization part, is that, you know, like I said, it doesn't matter what the use case of your crypto is. Where there is the government players, understand the way that they look at things. You alluded to something earlier about FTX having a hand in Alameda research. They are market makers. and they have a hand in moving the market up and down. There's some indicators on TradingView that you can actually see the vector candle zones, but like I said earlier, since the collapse of these things, you hardly see the presence of the market makers within the total market cap. And this is the thing about the market makers, is that they really show their hand at pivotal points in the chart. So you will notice that retail in the market, it doesn't have a very big movement across the board. It really takes capital to move the market in big candles and at speed. So the market makers show their hand at pivotal points in the chart. It will either appear at the lows or at the highs, rather large candles, or it'll be a stop hunt rise, stop hunt low. They play the ranges, or at least they start the ranges, whether it's towards the upside or the downside. But this is again goes back to what Donald was saying, that is that where you do have now this the centralization per se, where the government is involved, and unfortunately the way that these players look at these things, especially in terms of government, is that they don't look at the project as the project. So when we say, okay, let's look at Ethereum Classic, well, to the average, to us, the enthusiast, or to the developer, or to someone that has a hand in the development strategies or an idea in terms of Ethereum Classic or the token that you are busy with, is that we're looking at the fundamentals of it. Like, what can we do with this project? Can we pay? Can we use it as a decentralized finance? Can we use it as an NFT? What can we integrate into our protocols? But when we are looking at it from an investment perspective, we are looking at it, okay, how can this further our company, right? How can we further our brand? How can we integrate, or Ethereum, I'm just going to use Ethereum Classic as an example, but a company would look at how can we integrate Ethereum Classic into our payment systems? How can we integrate Ethereum Classic into the apps in which we want to build, or build a fundamental database for our systems, etc. But when we're looking at it from the perspective of a government entity or a government stakeholder, the government, unfortunately, the dark side of government is that by fundamental basis is that crypto was designed in inception to replace the global finance. So you are looking at, unfortunately, players within the government to say that, well, okay, if this is the future of our decentralized finance, or if this is the future of finance generally, then having a hand in that is actually a dangerous thing. Because the same way that a market maker can move the market because of the amount of power within the market, if the government has now an abundance of power with one of the biggest chains or one of the biggest mainnets out there, which is Ethereum, we are actually looking at a problem. Because if they decided to flip the switch and say, okay, cool, let's take things down, it can happen. Because when you are looking at the government's perspective or their look at crypto, they don't look at it in the same way that we look at it. We look at it like, what can Ethereum Classic do for me? What can Bitcoin do for me? How can I use this? When they look at it as crypto. It's just crypto. We need to take down crypto. Remember, in the inception of the crypto industry and the growth, Wall Street did want a big hand in this. Yes, there are big players in the market that wanted a hand in this. And if you can't get a hand in it, the biggest way to get it down is to get a big portion of it and completely flush the market out. And this is unfortunately, and it's kind of blindsided, because unless you know the fundamentals of what you are doing within the industry, or you have done enough research in the industry, you would know that the implications of having something so large to go proof of stake. You know what I mean? It consolidates all the power into one area, and it can't be good, because now again you are dealing with something like human nature, and where there is too much human nature with something that has more of the pie that can actually have a ripple effect on the little guy. That's not right, even though it might seem to be justified. How can I say, it nullifies the point of having decentralized finance. And also it kind of creates this, if example, we wanted to build on Ethereum Classic. Say there's a small developer that wants to build this DAI on Ethereum Classic, but say our Ethereum, the majority of our Ethereum tokens, or the majority of the value of or the intrinsic value that we have as a token, if that is reflected by one person or a group that that controls most of the token or the intrinsic value. And if they just decided, well, screw Ethereum Classic and just walk away from it, then it would be the small projects and the little guys project that would have the unjustified result of that, which is obviously going to be a downturn across the board. This decentralized thing is good, but proof of stake just it takes the point of decentralized finance away. And it's fascinating that and this is just a speculation, but that they got it right with such a big chain, which is Ethereum, and I thought it would be different.
Okay, thanks for that. And I think we've been going for almost 2 hours now, so maybe a good time to wrap things up. Before I do so, I just wanted to quickly talk about a topic about Twitter Spaces and whether or not we think it's a good idea to migrate the calls to Twitter Spaces. Personally, I kind of like it on Discord, but there have been some calls for Twitter Spaces, so I just wanted to get people's feedback on that and whether you would join us in that migration, whether we should test it out once and see what it's like, or shall we just stay here?
I think definitely we should test it out at least once, and do like a proper announcement on the Twitter accounts for it. I think we'll get more engagement. A lot of people don't even have Discord installed.
Yes, I agree. I think that the ETC community call is a very important asset that we have, and I would migrate from Discord, because if you think about it, Discord is like an invitation system. It's a closed system. So we need to be on an open platform, especially Twitter, where all the crypto world is there. And the other thing is to have the agenda in a regular website, maybe on the ethereumclassic.org website on a page there instead of GitHub, because GitHub is very difficult for people who don't know GitHub. GitHub is extremely complicated to read, to understand, to use. I would move the agenda also to a normal web page.
Yeah, I was actually planning eventually to convert it into its own URL, just generating from the markdown. So it would be on GitHub, but also at like ethereumclassiccommunitycalls.org or something. And it would have the agenda plus some like future calls and the list of videos and stuff all in one place. And I think that's definitely on my to-do list.
Yeah, even if you had like a subsection on the .org would be fine. I agree with that. People see GitHub and you just say the name and they immediately get scared and run away from it and think developer. So yeah, I think you know, how we've been operating has been fine. I think there's a great proof of concept here of that these calls have high value. It's also nice to just hear people's voice instead of reading text. I think that tone and personality and everything comes through. And if we got this on Twitter, I think we'll get far more people, and we'll reach people that aren't necessarily just looking at like involved in Ethereum Classic, which is what we want. That's outreach. And I think we'll start seeing the calls. I guarantee we've already seen these calls. It used to just be a couple of us. They're getting far more views. If we see Twitter Spaces and we start doing that, I think we'll see serious traction.
Yeah, I just have to just say thank you for the community call also, because Etcetera, Donald, Ronan, Shot, and Ross as well, that's building on the other side. Thank you so much for hosting this call, number one, because I personally am a teacher out of South Africa, and I'm teaching computer applications technology. One of my students are actually in the stream also, and they are in high school. And it's such an awesome thing to expand our community so that more people can know the value of the direction in which the world is moving forward, and how their financial system will be in the future one day. So I think a larger outreach, the Twitter Spaces, is a great idea. And also from an academic point of view, to have this opportunity to be here and speak about this and discuss it with you guys. and just to have slight exposure to people or students who are interested in taking an IT career or future one day. And also by the time that they experience that one day, they would obviously, our global financial system would have changed fundamentally by then, or at least getting into the right direction. So thank you guys on the call for the inputs. You guys are amazing. Thank you, just from a personal perspective.
You know, that's great to hear, because I think you know, some of us have been around the space for a little while, and we start to realize that we're not the people that are going to be the big push on ETC. You know, in the long run, there will be, you know, thousands of new people, and we'll end up just fading away and just being generally insignificant people. And so that's the goal, is that success here is when all of us kind of don't matter. So hopefully we, you know, with Twitter Spaces and those type of things, if we can really start building that community, if, you know, if we can get younger audiences also in there that have IT minds, those people, the next 10, 20 years of their life, they'll understand the great stuff that's built here on ETC, and as they grow in skill and everything, you know, they'll keep pushing ahead, while many of us fall off, have families, and, you know, priorities change. So.
Agreed. Generational. Agreed.
Yeah, thank you for the kind words there, and I'm glad we can help contribute. And I also agree that we hopefully one day we'll be able to hand over the baton to the next generation. On the note of outreach, I personally will not be satisfied until I can see Donald McIntyre dancing on TikTok and promoting ETC that way. So there you go, Donald, for your communications job.
I'm gonna practice.
All right, and on that note, I'll leave an open few seconds for free talk if anyone wants to bring anything up, but unless they do, we will wrap up in a few seconds.
Hey, just for the Twitter Spaces, is there a way to do that through the ETH Classic Twitter handle? So it's kind of, you know, we start building on that. It's like the community calls are getting hosted through there or something like that. Like, how does that work? Does anyone know? I've never done Twitter Spaces.
Yeah, I've never done it either, and I don't have a Twitter account at present, so I'd have to create one just for this, but that's okay. I think that'd be a question for Bob Somerville, because he's in control of that account. We could also do it from the ETC network account. So there's a number of options there, but I think first thing would be to do a bit of a practice run with some community members offline, so we can make sure everything is working before we do like a live stream. And I'm not even
kind of like doing like a green room.
Yeah, do you think we would need to have a YouTube stream if we did it on Twitter Spaces, because it's recorded, right?
I'm not sure, and I'm not sure if we can capture it so it's kind of posted on everything, right? If we can automate where it's recording the Twitter one, you know,
yes, you can
on YouTube.
You can. Yesterday, was it yesterday or the day before? A couple of not exchange owners, some couple of dev team were discussing the FTX fallout, and I was watching it from a stream on YouTube. But somebody was streaming the YouTube, and that was in the call. So maybe you can just test it out, but it is possible that it could be integrated on both platforms.
Oh, I see. So what you're saying is essentially it's you watch the Twitter space and then you do a screen cap and live stream on YouTube.
Yep, that can work, and the sound does come through and the video.
Okay, that makes sense.
What do you think, Brolal, as the AV guy?
I'll need to check. I don't know if Twitter has a desktop app, but if it doesn't, it may cut out a bit, because you may have a lot of cache going into the browser, so it may fail at some point. But we can do a test and see how it works.
All right, cool. Well, let's do some DMing and try and organize a test run. And if I hesitant to say next week, but at some point in the future, we will definitely do a version of this call on Twitter Spaces in the future. So thanks for the feedback on that, and yeah, we'll try and get something sorted. Okay, so thank you for joining us again for this bumper episode of Ethereum Classic Community Call. Thank you to everyone that's contributed to the call and some new faces as well, so that's nice to see. And yeah, keep it classy, and we'll see you next week, same time, potentially different place, but we'll keep you in the loop. And as always, thanks for joining and take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Restore, and thank you, Brotherall, for organizing the calls.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you guys. Till next time. Cheers.